Vichy regime in France. The title of her lecture is Vichy, a broken memory of an ambiguous past. And let me introduce briefly our speaker. Professor Latała is a historian. She's a senior researcher with a history department at the University of Geneva. Her research focuses on cultural exchanges and intellectual networks in the 19th and 20th centuries and on the intellectual history of Catholicism. Among her publications, there are co-edited monograph published this year entitled Towards Solidarity, the Use and Abuse of Concept of Compassion. And today's lecture will be focused on so-called syndrome of Vichy in France, on conflicting memory of this period in French history. And of course, on difficult reconciliation of the French people with their past. Professor Latała will trace the evolution of the Vichy memory in an historical perspective. And as you know, we'd like to dedicate 15-20 minutes after the seminar for discussion. The discussion will be coordinated by Professor Grzegorz Pożarlik. And now I'd like to give the floor to our speaker. Renata, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Anna, for your introduction, for this opportunity to participate in this project. Most fascinating. And I think that for everyone who observes the French political scene, but also its cultural life, what is striking is the permanent and conflicting presence of the memory of the years 1994 and 1944, marked by the Vichy regime. And the more the time passes, the more this memory seems to deepen, marked to weigh more and more in the collective conscience. The discussion, debates during the presidential election 2022 how sure that the memory of Vichy still remains, testify that the hiding memory of Vichy remains alive and it is still instrumentalized by various camps and political groups. The purpose of this lecture is not to try to understand how the memory of Vichy is used or instrumentalization by political circles today, as this topic should be addressed in June. Today, I would like to focus on presenting how the Vichy memory has evolved in the perspective on the last 60, 70 years. It seems that to me that this allowed on the understand why certain myths allied to this memory persist and why the lands relate to this lieu de mémoire do not heal. My analysis is not to give a complete answer, but I will make it possible to point out some significant terms. In my analysis, I would like to focus on some vectors of the transmission of the past, i.e. everything that allows for reconstruction of events for social purposes. It's certainly, there are several vectors, official vectors, cultural vectors, literature, cinema, television, or scholarly vectors, associative vectors. I'm not going to study all these vectors of transmission of the past. I have chosen in this analysis to take into consideration 3 vectors that have played a determining role: commemoration, cinema, and scholarly transmission. And Vichy is, thank you for this slide, yeah, is a place of memory, covers both the question of the representation of Pétain's regime and the French state, the memory of the various forms of collaboration which the Nazi occupier during the Second War, and the problem posed to the national conscience by the existence of a French anti-Semitism that played a decisive role in the implementation of the final solution of France. In the periodization of the evolution of the memory of Vichy, we can identify 5 phases. The first, you can to change slide, please. Yeah, thank you. The period reconstruction and mourning of the past. The post-war period saw the discrediting of Vichy, but also of all-writing movement, the trial of this leader, the execution of Laval, the imprisonment of Pétain. What is interesting is the fact that the trial included 2 charges, that of conspiracy against the Republic and that of collaboration with the enemy. This means that a complete history of Vichy was reduced to national treason. The circles of leaders must be condemned. A historian who has studied this period defines it as a period of purification or a period of mourning. It was studied this period, and because I will not dwell on this period. The political, professional, ideological purge marks this first stage. It was also the period when society was marked by the after effects of the civil war. One part supported the Vichy regime, the other the Free France of General de Gaulle. The post-war reconstruction required the liquidation of the aftermath and various political forces, both left and right, sought to exploit this ambivalency legacy in their project. It was the General de Gaulle who led the first stone of the founding myth of the memory of Vichy and crystallized at the time, but by proposing his vision of an eternal France. Yes, is this a photo from August 45, 25 August, liberation of Paris. His speech is most emblematic. He said, Paris, Paris outraged, Paris martyred, Paris liberated, and she speaks about eternal France. It is call for unity, for reconstruction around the eternal France, to underline the solidarity of the resistance fighters. The liberation is celebrated during official celebration events. However, the French discovered the existence to the camps. The victims of the German prisons, the survivor returned to the country. And what we observe is the tension between the forgetting of the darkest page, the Civil War, but also an ambiguous attitude towards the resistance fighters to calls for reconciliation. the official memory seems to be incapable of finding fragmented memories. An idealized image of the resistance is created, claimed by the communist milieu, but also by the circle around the goal. That is the period 1947 years is the premise of the Cold War, the social tension, and we observe the resurrection of a new Vichyism, anti-communism. In politics, the anti-communism of the Cold War led the reign of Vichy notable. The idea of amnesty was defended and was decided. It was the pretext of national unity. And after Pétain's death, the Pétainists joined forces to defend his memory. And Pétain was present as the heir of the Great War and not as the head of state of Vichy. The second period we can is repressed memory, is repressed memory or replacement memory. From 1954 to 1971, the memory of Vichy became less conflicting. The French seemed to repress the civil war. One can be observed in this period is the establishment of dominant myth. Resistentialism. It's not resistance, but resistentialism. The term was invented at the liberation by opponents of the purge. And now it has another meaning. Firstly, it refers to a process that aims on the hand to marginalize the Vichy regime, and on the other to influence its influence of French society, including its most negative aspect. On the other hand, the reconstruction of an object of memory, the resistance. Thus, the object of memory is no longer Vichy, but resistance. A memory celebrates with ideological groups such as Gaullists and as the communists. Thirdly, the assimilation of the resistance to whole nation. The years 1504 saw two events that determined the direction. De Gaulle published the Memory de Guerre, which hinted ambiguous reading occupation. The center of the story of occupation is London. Alger is the resistant. And also, in this year, Fayard published in the first synthesis of the French state, L'Histoire de Vichy, by Robert Aron et Georgette Elgui. Aron is a non-conformist intellectual, the Jewish writer. This work will remain a reference. Its thesis, there are two Vichy, of Pétain, and on the Laval, that he distinguished state and government. The work serves to calm the spirit, to reconcile the French. And we can, the year is how the cinema has also the most important role, and you certainly know Asterix. Is in the time the image of French, of Gauls, reconciliation, honor is most important. And this is most in this direction. The year 764 marked a new vision occupation. It's the transfer of Jean Moulin H to the Panthéon on 19 December. Was a major event in the construction of the new memory. The decision was taken by de Gaulle and André Malraux, the Minister of Cultural Affairs. The objective was clear. The nation paid tribute to this early resistance. And the symbol is a free France. It's not Vichy, it's not occupation, it's the free France. The transfer of Moulin ashes was in fact a political act. Jean Moulin participated in the formation of the new memory as the Gaullist methodology declared. This is constant in the Gaulle's thinking. The resistance is above all of military action, in the continuity of the state, in the continuity of Verdun. This vision had a positive effect because the civil war to be evacuated. Since the army was against a foreign enemy, for traitors, and resistance, it's a united resistance. In short, the representation of the memory of the Civil War and collaboration in the 16th year saw a spectacular revival on the memory of the resistance from particularly angle that Gaullist memory. It's the orientation to exorcise Vichy, exorcise black memory, and to create vision of French people united and in construction of a republic. The next phases, I please for the slide, we come to, it's the broken mirror. The 70s years were decisive turning points in the memory of the Second War and the Vichy regime. Debates, film, and historical works provoked a progressive and collective awareness of the Vichy regimes, complicity in the genocide of the Jews. First of all, in Marcel Opus' film Les Chagrins Pitié, demystified for the first time the image of the unanimously resistant France. Chagrin, pitié, grief and pity. In the second, Robert Paxton's book, La France de Vichy, published in France in 1703, start from the German archives to show that Vichy wanted a policy of collaboration, a took part in the repression against the Jews and autonomous way. I would like to pay more attention to the film, that it is make a symbolic moment in the history in France and for the future scholarly research in history. Le Chagrin et la Pitié is a Franco-German-Swiss documentary directed by Marcel Opus. It presents the city of Clermont-Ferrand, a city located at the free zone during the Second War. The film shot in black and white. She showed the interview and new footage of the time, present and Twitter commentary made under the control of the Vichy regime's propaganda. In the face of the dominant discourse, which had only reported an act of resistance, authors made it possible to emphasize much more ambiguous everyday the problem, the collaboration, by shattering the falsely unanimous image of France resistant. The film played an important role in inaugurating a phase of the memory of the occupation that the historian Henri Rousseau called broken mirror. The Chagrin et Pitié was initially intended to broadcast on French television, but the television refused to broadcast it. And the film provokes considerable polemic. Simone Weil criticized the relevance of the documentary. She found it shocking that the resistant city of Clermont-Ferrand was presented as a seat of collaboration. And it was polemic during 10 years, and only in 81, the French people had the film was present in television. It was broadcast on television, for the first time in 1981. But for this moment, most important, most psychologically important for the French people, the question of the Vichy government's anti-Semitic action is gradually being brought to light, all through the cinema. It's the film for Holocaust, American film, und dann Claude Lanzmann film Shoah. The opening of the Vichy Archives increased historian research on French responsibility. And the great trial against Klaus Barbie and later Max Papon contribute to evolution of knowledge of memory. And most important in this period is the book of historian Henri Rousseau. He not speak about memory, but he speak the syndrome of Vichy. It's pathological problem of society. And this book is published in 1807, and for this moment is, I think, it's the evolution. We can maybe turn the change the slide, please. It's changed the moment because the historian work not only for the responsibility of state, French state, but of responsibility, individual responsibility of France, of actors, of theater, of the police, of the different of the social actors, not only for the state. And is the time of the Vichy, a past that does not pass, is the title for the other book of Henri Rousseau. I use this title of this book to describe a new phase in the evolution of memory, because which began in the 90s. But I think that this title best illustrates the change that took place in these years with regard to collective memory. In this time, we observed the focusing of memory on the anti-Semitism of Vichy, a phenomenon that marks very strongly these years in the 90s, like to the automatization of a specifically Jewish memory. The fundamental impact of this new dimension can be seen in the transformation of the memory of Vichy. The problem lighted at the anti-Semitic policy of Vichy are in great demand in early of 19th year. First of all, the polemics on the commemoration of the Val-d'Hiv roundup. Val-d'Hiv, it was one of the most tragic events of the occupation, the arrest in 1942 by the French police of more than the Jews and the children gathered in the Val d'Hiver, and they were then deported to Auschwitz. And the police, French police, René Bousquet, the General Secretary of the police, organized material human means to surprise the Jews living in Paris. Since after war, all presidents have found the words to underline the suffering of the victims, stigmatize the genocide. But the response have been different. And the first time, François Mitterrand, on July 16, 1992, paid tribute to the victims of the Val-d'Hiv roundup, but he refused to recognize the responsibility of the Republic in these crimes. For Mitterrand, the Republic was not blamed, since the French state had substituted. For Mitterrand, as for his predecessor, France was not the blame, but France, that the Free France, that the France of the National Liberation Committee, that the France of General de Gaulle. The polemic of the commemoration of the Val-d'Hiv roundup finally obliged Mitterrand to institute a national day commemorating racist anti-Semitic persecution. This is celebrated for the first time in 1993. François Mitterrand never minimized the tragedy of the Val-d'Hiv, but he refused to accept that the French Republic was responsible to the crime of Vichy. It was only Mitterrand's successor, Jacques Chirac, then president from the right, who first acknowledged France's responsibility in 1995. It's Jacques Chirac speech delivered on 16 July 1995 at the ceremony commemorating the Val-d'Hiv roundup. Chirac acknowledged for the first time the responsibility for the French state in the deportation, extermination of Jews during the Second War. It was a very important moment, and Jacques Chirac delivers a speech. He was calm, composed, distant, and the rhetoric used was very important, very violent. And for Chirac, for the French, I think it's the historical moment. But because for this moment, all other presidents or governments have go in this orientation, the commemoration of this moment of history. It's not difference of this president is right or left, but is the new problem. However, the new phases which begin in this time after Chirac's speech, it's the hiding memory of Vichy. The new phase in the memory of Vichy in France begin in the 90s and still continues. And I don't speak about these new phases because in June we can speak about, but the problem, the old problem, it's ever present in French memory, in political scene, and commemoration, official vector is not enough to change completely collective memory, because the other vector, when association, literature, scholarly book and research, it's in parallel most important. And in conclusion, I can say that in political life, the memory hiding of Vichy hiding and it's instrumentalized in different moments when it's the problem, social tension, the problem of values, the contradiction. Every time the memory come back, and the process of the memory is, I think, for me, it's not completely finished for the French society. I think, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Renata, for a very interesting lecture. And now I think we can give the floor to Professor Pożarlik for discussion. Grzegorz, are you with us? Yes, I can see.
Certainly. Thank you, Joanna. Yes, but first of all, let me thank you very much indeed, Professor Latała, for your truly comprehensive, insightful, panoramic picture of this, yeah, we can call it bleeding wound. Yes, still bleeding wound in French collective memory. The memory of Vichy is still very much like a bleeding wound in French public space. Which brings me, you see, to the question, and perhaps we could begin with this one. Actually, collective memory, or kind of the question of responsibility, the question of collective responsibility, I think, in case of Vichy, but also other cases we have been discussing so far, is essential. So maybe we can start with this. Yes, a kind of a struggle actually to overcome trauma of collective responsibility. The case of Vichy. But yes, otherwise, please, maybe you may have other questions to Professor Latała. Please, now the floor is yours. Questions, comments, remarks, please. Please, who wants to start first? Yes. Our discussion, please. So maybe as to kind of warm up a bit. Oh yes, Professor Abbasi, please. Yes.
First of all, I would like to say thank you for a very interesting lecture. And I have a question of rather theoretical character. Would you distinguish any kind of criterion for the broken memory? If we would like to measure the brokenness of one's memory, of a collective memory, what elements of that we should look at? This is my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. For broken memory, I'm not sure you 4 elements for broken memory. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, I am interested in the very phenomenon of the broken memory. What is it? How can I recognize that the memory is broken?
Okay, for me, it's my analysis. The broken memory is because it's to lecture of history of French. For the I think it's the problem for the France is, I don't know difference in Spanish and Italian, but it's the problem of the state, of the continuity of the state, the problem of republic. Its image of republic is must be intact, and for revolution from revolution, and the memory of republic is not intact, is broken, and is broken not only in the level of the state, of the notable of government, but is not intact in level of the individual person. For example, you know Sartre. Yeah, Sartre is the intellectual most important in 16 years for the left currents in politics and thinkings. But Sartre, during the Vichy regime, it's not non-conformist, and it's not more of the person in most important person, the ground person, that they have the authority, and the person they have the authority when the goal don't accept during the years the black history of Vichy. I'm not sure I'm clear, but my English is not too good. But broken memory is the memory not only memory collective, but memory familial and memory of the circles. And public memory is clear, but the government, the commemoration, it's a clear direction. But collective memory is the memory of the different group circles, and not only group. We are that in the last election with Zemmour or it's the group. They need to return of the memory of this period. That it's not clear, it's not a broken memory. I use this symbolic mirror broken. Henry Rousseau said, but it's most symbolic of to looking. It's not only history of this period, but the analysis of the period, but also not vision of this period. The mirror is broken because we don't have give the heritage this existing during 20 years in France to looking for this period. I'm not sure I'm clear.
Yeah, for me now it's clear, and it is in fact very inspiring, because as I understood you properly, this is somehow connected with not only with national identity, but also with individual identity and group identity. This broken memory can be broken on different levels, and these levels to some extent intersect, and to some extent does not intersect. Nevertheless, the whole memory, as you said, as the mirror, is broken into small pieces. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the case of France, it's most important the image of republic, because is this tradition like tradition, and history is more important in France, in our other country too, but specifically in history of France, because the other authority not existing, and yeah, it's not the same. The time here, the speaking about that problem of this memory, but was the historian then look to demonstrate that the problem of Vichy and collaboration and anti-Semitism and fascist ideology come from a revolution, from a republic, and it's the other problem, not for him, but the image of republic is broken, but it's broken. It's the first, for me, it's the first problem of this memory.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Very well. Yes, please, any other comments, remarks, questions, interventions, please? Julio, please. Julio Ponce, please.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, thank you very much to Professor Renata Latała for your speech about Vichy. And following with the question of the broken memory and the broken mirrors in France, I'd like to ask how this broken memory is affecting the conception or the vision of the French Republic nowadays, if it's affecting in some way, or if it's a current problem, because well, I have the impression that since the lot of books published in France talk about La France qui tombe, the France that has a lot of problem. I'd like to know if this broken memory is another ingredient, is another element in the current problems of France.
I'm not sure to understand. It's the problem today.
Yeah.
Really, we can to say the last two presidential election in 2017 and 2022. The problem to return, and it's most important that in the 2017, during the debates, the Mélenchon of its left and Le Pen, the both when they speak about Vichy, they underline the importance of republic and continuity of Vichy. It's every time. And in the last election of 2022, it's most important that it's most interesting that Eric Zemmour, it was important, representing a large circles of French society, most important. And the strategy of Macron, it was to go to celebrate commemoration à Val-Rive. to demonstrate that is the moment to say no Vichy, no right, no Zemmour, but in the it's most subtle. I don't know. Yeah, no directly, but by the demonstration. Yeah, official demonstration, and. But it was interesting the last election because every time the discussion, I don't know, the discussion turned to the Vichy or to the in culture program, and every time Zemmour or the Le Pen, not too much, but Zemmour, but it was most dangerous maybe for the circles, political circles. At every time, the turn to the Vichy or to the Pétain, or to about two symbols, de Gaulle and Pétain. At de Gaulle, it's not only the figure of the resistance, but it's the figure of the not clear memory of Vichy. That it's I think it's the hope for the resurrection a symbol, and de Gaulle, it's clearly de Gaulle representing the continuity of Republic, the continuity of Republic for the century, and but it's not only continuity, it's not only resistance, it's only not clear concept of memory, and but it's interesting that 40 years after, it's now the two persons, Pétain et Charles de Gaulle, come back in the political scene. That I think it's most interesting to analyze the discussion, the debates during the last election, and the different circles, the resistance, the right, left, but it's not difference, and not difference. Is the research for the authority? I don't know. I not have the bilan, the reflection. I think, but I'm a historian. That is too short period to have the balance of this period. But it's most interesting story of the France. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your answer.
Yeah, it's too long.
Very well. So let me just quickly wrap up our discussion so far. Yes, the memory of Vichy is broken conceptually, indeed empirically as well, but it's still valid, it's still relevant. And it's very interesting, you see, because one may get an impression that history strikes back again in Central Europe, Central Europe. But actually, this is much more like European perspective, that history is relevant, the very understanding of whom we are in terms of the ideal of the Republic. So yes, very well. Now, please, perhaps some last comments, interventions. Before we conclude that thing. Joanna, yes, if you could possibly, yes, conclude or wrap up, yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Grzegorz. Thank you once again to Professor Latała for this very inspiring lecture. Thank you for your questions, important comments, remarks. And I'd like to remind you that we are seeing the next month for the last lecture in this academic year. And the lecture will be given by Professor Schmidt on 19th of May. For today, it's all, I think. Thank you once again for joining our meeting. and we are seeing in May. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. See you
Bye.
next.
Next
Thank
time.
you. Bye.
See you
Bye.
next month.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank